How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Ayin Aleph. Yep. Daf Ayin Aleph of Masechta BavaBasra. Let me just check something. Okay. Daf Ayin Aleph of Masechta BavaBasra. Now, so listen up. Listen up. Listen up. Listen up. Listen up. Listen up. Today, tomorrow is going to be a difficult daf. Tomorrow's going to be a difficult daf, but the difficulty starts today. Tomorrow is the difficult daf, the difficulty starts today. Oh no, that's bad. That's real bad. Oh no, that's really bad. That's really bad. Oh, that's bad. Chavi, after years, I'm now sitting on this side of the table because the sun comes in so stark on the other side of the table that I can't see. But I guess now, over time, the angle of the sun has shifted, and now it's reflecting off of something and going right in my eyes. I'm telling you, the sun here is a next level. Like, I have to wear sunglasses in the house. That's how strong it is. Like, for a few hours a day, I can't walk in my house. The sun is so stark, and now it's coming straight at me. Oh, dagnabbit. Akoponim. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to wear sunglasses. Alright, let's wear sunglasses. 1 second. The only problem with wearing the sunglasses is that they're not prescription, and I'm not wearing contact lenses, so that's alright. Anyways, okay, so it starts to get, I hope that, okay, it's on. Alright. So what was I saying? So it starts to get difficult today, and, right, so tomorrow's gonna be a difficult daf. It kind of starts to get difficult today, but the thing is that, Ayin Aleph Amud Beis is all of 8 lines or something, so it can only be that hard. It can only be so hard if it's only 8 lines. So anyways, okay, I'm sorry, that sun. Alright, so hopefully I'll do okay without the being able to see properly and everything. So it says the Mishnah, and Daf Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph, Lo es habor velo es hagas velo es hashovach. Alright, so if somebody's selling a field, so excluded from the sale by default is if there's a pit or a wine press or a dovecote. So those things are excluded, just like if you sell a house, then the pit and the cistern are excluded. So if you sell a field, so the pit, the wine press, the dovecotes are excluded. All right, ben charev and ben yeshuvin, whether they are, whether the pit is empty, whether there's water in it, whether the wine press has a vineyard next to it or not, whether the dovecote is all lovey-dovey or whether it's not. V'tzarich likach, right? Either way, these things are excluded. V'tzarich likach lo derech divrei Rab Akiva. Okay, so as we know, machlokes between Rab Akiva and the Chacham vis-a-vis, right, with regard to mocher b'ayin yafeh mocher or mocher b'ayin ra'a u'mocher. So we're saying that if Shimon sells his field to Reuven, so the pit, let's say, is excluded, which means that Shimon retains ownership over the pit. Now, what about how does he get to the pit? What about a path to get to the pit? So, what about a path to get to the pit? So, Rabbi Akiva says, Mocher ba'ayin yafehu mocher, which means that Shimon was a very generous seller, which means that he also sold the path to Reuven, which means that he now needs to work out with Reuven how he's going to be able to get to his pit, right? So, v'tzarich likach lo derech divrei Rabbi Akiva. So, Rabbi Akiva says he's going to have to buy back a path to the pit, or the wine press, or the dovecote from Reuven. Whereas the Chacham say, not necessary, because mocher ba'ayin ra'a hu mocher. That nice, I think the sun moved. Okay, I can put back on my glasses. Okay, let's talk this out. But the Chacham, of course, say mocher ba'ayin ra'a hu mocher. that a seller is an ungenerous seller, and therefore, since he retains the pit, so he also retains a path to the pit. Okay, a pit path. What was it saying before? Oh, good. Okay, I can see now again. Gefaldig. Okay, so according to Chacham, though, the Shimon does not need to buy back a path to the pit, because since he retains the pit, Memele retains a path to the pit. Umoder Rabbi Kiva, however, admits, Bizman she'omar lo chutz me'elu she'eno tzarich likach lo derech. That Rabbi Kiva, however, admits that since by default, let's say, right, by default, the pit, the wine press, the dovecote is excluded, so he doesn't need to say anything, right? If Shimon says to Reuven, I'm selling you my field, so Memele, the pit, let's say, is excluded. So he doesn't need to say, and I'm keeping the pit for myself. What if he does say, I'm keeping the pit for myself? So that means that, right? So it's meaningful. It means something. It means that not only am I keeping the pit for myself, which automatically I would get, but I'm even retaining a path to get to that pit as well. So again, Umoder Rabbi Kiva admits that Bizman she'omar, that if Shimon explicitly said, she'omar lo, that he says to Reuven, chutz me'elu, that I'm selling you the field except for these things, she'enu tzarich likach lo derech. Well, in that case, he does not need to buy back a path to get to the pit, to the wine press, to the dovecote. All right. Micharon le'acher. This should all be familiar to us so far. Micharon le'acher. If Shimon only sold the pit, only sold the wine press, only sold the dovecote, if that's all that he sold, but he retained the rest of the field. So again, we get back to the machlokas of mocher bain yofa mocher, mocher bain ro mocher. According to Rabbi Kiva, mocher bain yofa mocher. So if Shimon is selling Reuven a pit, so he's not just selling Reuven a pit, but oichet a path to the pit. Whereas the Chacham say mocher bain ro mocher, Shimon's mom is just selling the pit, nothing else, and Reuven's going to now have to, figure out, negotiate separately with Shimon to be able to get to the pit without a jetpack. So again, Macharon la'acher, if the only thing that Shimon sold to Reuven was the pit, or the wine press, or the dovecote. Rabbi Kiva says, Eino tzarich likach lo derech. Reuven does not need to separately buy a path to the pit, because Memele Shimon included it. Mocher bain yofa u'mocher. The Chacham say tzarich likach lo derech. Reuven does in fact need to separately buy a path to the pit, because mocher bain ra'ahu mocher, and Shimon literally only sold the pit, but no path to the pit. He's going to have to take a jetpack to get to the pit. Bamid dvarim amurim. All this stuff that we've been saying, that if you sell a house, the pit and the cistern are excluded. You sell a field, the pit and the dovecote and the wine press are excluded. You sell a city, those things are excluded. This whole thing about when you sell something, there are things that are excluded. That's by b'mocher. That's by a mecher. That's by a sale. Aval b'nosein matone. But by gifting, in the context of gifting, if Shimon is giving Reuven his field as a gift, well then he's generous and nothing is excluded. No saying eskula, all of it goes to Reuven. If Shimon gifts a field to Reuven, Reuven gets not just the field, but oichet the pit, oichet the wine press, oichet the dovecote. It's included in the gift. Similarly, ha'achin shechelku zachu b'sada zachu b'chula. Similarly, Reuven and Shimon are brothers, and their father passed away. They're dividing up the estate. Reuven takes one field, Shimon takes the other field. So Reuven gets the field and the pits, and the wine presses and the dovecotes. Shimon gets his field along with whatever pits, wine presses, dovecotes, right? So in that case also, everything's included. Hamachzik b'nichzei ager, hechzik b'sada, hechzik b'kula oichet. If there's nichzei ager, right, a ger at a field, and proselyted a field. He passed away. He doesn't have any relatives. So kol hakodem zoche, whoever gets there first come, first serve. So whoever makes a chazak on the field, so they own not just the field, but oichid, pits, wine presses, dovecotes. Hamakdish es asodeh. And here this is where things are going to get complicated. Beginning today, but really tomorrow is going to be the hard daf. Hamakdish es asodeh. So if somebody's makdish a field, right, he says that I am I'm donating my field to hekdish. So the shaila is, what's included? Are the pits and the wine presses and the dovecotes included, or is it just the field without that? Is it like a sale? Is it like a mecher which excludes these things, or is it like a matana which includes these things? So hikdish es kula. So Tanna Kama says everything is included. Everything is included. If a person says, I'm donating my field to the Beis HaMikdash, so then I'm being makdish my field to the Beis HaMikdash, it includes the bor, gas, shovach. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon, hamakdish es asodeh lo hikdish elo es hechoriv amurkov ve'es sdan ashikmo. Reb Shimon disagrees with the Tanna Kama. The Tanna Kama said somebody's maktish's field, everything's included. Pits, wine presses, dovecotes. Reb Shimon says, punkt fakert. He says the opposite. He says, if a person is maktish his field, only the field is hekdish. The pits, the wine presses, the dovecotes, not hekdish. Not hekdish. Not hekdish. However, the grafted carob tree and the prune sycamore tree, which normally would be excluded, the grafted carob tree and the prune sycamore tree, which normally would be excluded from the sale, they are included in the sale. So all the things that by a sale, well, not by a sale, by the hektish, right? So all the things that according to Reb Shimon, all the things that by a sale would be excluded are excluded from hektish as well. The only exception being the grafted carob tree and the pruned sycamore tree. Now the Gemara is going to explain the reason being because according to Reb Shimon, he's makdish the field. Okay, so he's makdish the field, but not the pits, wine presses, and anything else. The thing is that these trees, technically speaking, are excluded as well. The grafted carob and the pruned sycamore are excluded as well, technically. The thing is that they're nurturing from the ground, from the land, and the land is hektish. So memela, the trees are going to be hektish. Okay, so according to the Tanna Kama, if a person is makdish his field, he's makdish orchid everything else, right? The pits, wine presses, etc. According to Reb Shimon, no, it's only the field, everything is excluded. But the grafted carob and the pruned sycamore, technically they're excluded too, but because they are being nurtured, they're getting nutrients from the ground and irrigation from the ground, and the ground is hektish, so memela they become hektish oichit. Okay, fine. So again, so Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon, hamakdish is a sod, if a person is makdish a field, lo hektish ella, the only sort of exceptional things that would be hektish are esacharev, amurkov, the grafted carob tree, besdana shikma, and the pruned sycamore tree. Maishna mecher, maishna matana. What's the difference between a mecher and a matana? How come when Shimon sells his field to Ruvain, so the pits, wine presses, dovecotes are excluded, but when he gifts the field to Ruvain, everything's included. How come? So Perish Yehuda ben Nekusa. So Yehuda ben Nekusa explained Lifnei Rebbe in front of Rebbe. Zeh perish v'zeh lo perish. The difference is that by the gift he was explicit, I guess, that these things are included, and that by the sale he didn't specify these additional things. But the Gemara says, what do you mean? We're talking about the sale. In neither case did he specify anything. That's what we're talking about. Hi zeh perish v'zeh lo perish, zeh lo perish v'zeh lo perish. Not that in one case he did specify, in the other case he didn't. In either case he specified. That's the whole point. We're talking about when he sells or gifts a field, by default, what is included and what's excluded. We're saying that by a sale, all these things are excluded. By a gift, all these things are included. Why? So ela ze haya lo lefarish v'ze lo haya lo lefarish. No, the difference is that by a gift, that by a sale, if these things were included, he would have had to have specified them. By a gift, they're included even without having to specify them because he's being generous. And Mamela, these things are included. But by mocher by enra mocher, and therefore by default they would be excluded. He would have had to have specified them. Okay. Hahuda Amr Lahu. So it was a fellow who said to people, Havu leile flanya Besa de machzik mea gulfe. Give as a gift to so and so a particular domicile, a particular house that is able to hold 100 barrels. 100, I guess, barrels of wine. 100 barrels. So they found one house that most accurately fit the description, but that house actually fit 120 barrels, not 100. So the shaila is, what's with the extra 20 barrels? Are they included or not? Now remember, this is talking about a gift. So again, so Awuda Amalu, there was somebody who said to the people, Havale leflanya besa de machzik mea gulfe, a particular house that can hold 100 barrels. Ishtakach dava machzik mea ve'esen. They found a house that this person owned, but the house holds 120 barrels, not 100. There was no house, there was no property that he owned that at a house that would hold 100 barrels. The only one that was relevant was 120. So Marzutra said, Mea Omerle, Mea Besin Lo Omerle. So Marzutra said, okay, well, the gift was for 100 barrels, not 120, and therefore the receiver only receives 5/6 of the house. He only receives 100 barrels worth of house. Omerle, Ravashi says to Marzutra, what? Wait, Vesin. So Mea Omarle, Mea Vesin Lo Omarle, Ravashi Omar, Milo Tnan. But don't we learn in our Mishnah, when are things excluded from the sale? By a sale. Aval benosim atone, but by a gift, nosin eskulon, everything's included. Some mandiyoy matone by yofa yoy, v'chanami mandiyoy matone by yofa yoy. So rather, we see that somebody who gives a gift, he gives a gift ba'ayin yafe. He's generous, and therefore the default by this gift would be that if he says 100, he was basically saying this particular house that can hold lots and lots of barrels. He said 100. Turns out it's 120. That's also included. He's being generous. He's giving a gift. The whole house would be included in the gift. Okay, Cheve. Wait, what's that noise? That's a hund. There's a hund. The hund is making noise. Oh. It's a good thing I have noise cancelling headphones because I can hear the hund through the headphones. Imagine I didn't have the headphones. This is where the daf starts getting difficult. And again, it can only get so difficult because there isn't that much left in the daf. Tomorrow's daf is going to be hard. Let's go weiter. So the Mishnah said, "Amakdish is asad hikdish v'chulei." So the shaila is, if a person is makdish is field, so what's included in the hekdish? The Tanakh says everything. Makdish a field, it includes the pits, it includes the wine press, it includes the dovecotes. Reb Shimon said everything is excluded except for the trees, except for the grafted carob tree and the pruned sycamore tree. Amr Ravuna, says Ravuna, Afagav the Amr Abanon, even though the rabbi said, Akone shnei ilonis besoch shel chaver. So if Shimon owns a field and Reuven buys 2 trees in the field, just 2 trees in the field, hariza lo kono karka. So Reuven purchases only those 2 trees. No other property, no land around it that he would need, in order to support the tree, not the land underneath it. If the tree dies, he has no right to replant it. if Reuven buys only 2 trees from Shimon's field, or from Shimon's property, Reuven has literally those 2 trees, nothing else. 3 trees is a different story, then he does get like kind of the necessary land. But 2 trees, only the trees. However, Mochar Karka, but if it was Fakert, if Shimon sold the property to Reuven, and all he left for himself is 2 trees, Mochar Karka v'shir shnei ilonis lefanov, if Shimon sold the property to Reuven, but he left for himself 2 trees, yesh lo karka. So he does have property, at least the property, like whatever, I guess at least the property underneath it. Right, what does I say? Right, so he at least has property underneath it, so that if the tree falls down, he'll be able to plant another one. Okay. Fine. Okay. Fine. Okay, so again, if Shimon, well, let's say this, if Reuven bought 2 trees on Shimon's property, all he has the right to is those trees, no property. But if it's fakert, right, so meaning as long as the trees are there and they're producing, let's say, fruit or whatever, so Reuven can enjoy the fruit. Once those trees die, his ownership is over. He can't replant them because he didn't acquire any property. But if it was fakert, if Shimon sold the property to Reuven but retained for himself, he kept for himself 2 trees, so he's keeping for himself not just those 2 trees, but oichet, the land that those trees are on. Nafkamina, if they fall down, he can replant them. And even according to Rabbi Akiva, who says Mocher ba'in Yofe hu Mocher, so I would think, Mocher ba'in Yofe hu Mocher. So if Shimon is selling the field, I would think to Reuven, according to Rabbi Akiva, if Shimon is selling the field to Reuven, he's selling everything to Reuven. If he keeps 2 trees for himself, he's only keeping those 2 trees, but he sold everything else. No, not so. The Gemara says that this concept would be even according to Rabbi Akiva, who generally would say that the seller is a generous seller, and I would think that by default he sold all the property to Reuven, even the property underneath his trees. Not in this case. By a pit, by a cistern, where the pit and the cistern don't negatively impact the ground at all. A tree, on the other end, is nurturing from the ground. It kind of weakens the ground. I guess it makes a difference in the ground. I'm not a farmer or a guy who grows trees and stuff. But I guess conceptually, I guess it makes sense, right? You have a tree in the ground. It's using nutrients and stuff from the ground. So I guess it makes an impact on the ground. So therefore, by like a pit or a cistern is relatively neutral. So therefore, Shimon, so Rabbi Akiva would say, Mocher ba'in Yofe hu Mocher, that Shimon is selling to Reuven everything. He's maintaining for himself is it retaining? I don't know. Can it be both? Dennis, can you say both? He maintains for himself? Does it have to be retains for himself? I don't know. Is retain even wrong? Is maintain right? I don't know. So by the pit, he retains for himself the pit, and he can but he doesn't necessarily keep for himself the path to get to the pit, and he'll work that out. Shimon will work out with Reuven how he'll be able to get to his pit. But the thing is with the tree, if Shimon sells the property to Reuven and he keeps for himself 2 trees, the thing is Shimon knows that the trees negatively, they make an impact, they weaken somehow the property, the ground. And therefore he knows that unless he takes care of himself, Reuven's not going to, if those trees fall down, Reuven's not going to allow him to replant it. And therefore Shimon knows this going into it, and therefore in this particular case, when he keeps these 2 trees for himself, he also retains for himself the land underneath them, so that if they fall down, he'd be able to replant them, because he knows that unless he stipulates this explicitly, if those trees fall down, Reuven's going to say, okay, Ad Khan, enough. I don't want you replanting those trees. You sold me everything. I don't want you replanting the trees on that property. So therefore, because Shimon knows that there is a strong likelihood, there's a strong chance that if they fall down, Reuven won't allow him to replant it. So he makes sure that if he retains the rights to the trees, he also retains the right to the land beneath it, so that he can replant it. So again, so Afilu Rabbi Akiva, even according to Rabbi Akiva, the Omer Mocher Bayin Yofe Mocher, who generally says that a seller is a generous seller, Hane Mili Gabi Bor B'dus, that is by a pit or a cistern, that they don't weaken the land. But trees which weaken the land, im isa delo shear, if Shimon were to sell everything and just keep for himself the trees, but none of the land underneath it, well then, Leimalei, if the trees fall down, Reuven is going to say to Shimon, okay, Ad Kan, time is up, pack your bags, Akor Ilancho, Shkol, Vizil, take your tree and get out of here, you're done, it's my field now. Therefore, even Rabbi Akiva would say that if Shimon sells his property to Reuven but keeps for himself 2 trees, he also keeps the land underneath them so that if they fall down, he'll be able to replant them. Okay, fine, Givaldik. Here is the Shaila. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, Reb Shimon Omer says to Reb Shimon, Hamakdish es asodeh lo hikdish elo chorav amurkov visdana shikma. That Reb Shimon says that if a person is makdish his field, so according to Chacham, it includes everything, even the pits and the ditches and stuff, fine. According to Reb Shimon, he says no, all the pits and the ditches and stuff are excluded. The only things that are going to be hekdish is the grafted carob tree and the prune sycamore tree. Those are the only things that would be hektish. Everything else would not be hektish. The pits, the wine press is not hektish. Right? So he's makdish his field. The field is hektish. The pits, wine presses, dovecotes are not. But the grafted carob tree and the prune sycamore tree would be hektish as well. Vitani Allah, and it was taught about it. Omer Shimon says, Reb Shimon, Matam, how come he holds this way? Hol v'yonkin mi stay hektish. Because they are nurturing from a field that is hektish. So if the field is hektish, and these trees are nurturing from that field, so memela they become hektish as well. But now here's the kasha. If you're telling me that when a person keeps something for himself, so if you're telling me that in the case of a sale, that if Shimon sells everything to Reuven, but keeps for himself 2 trees, then he's also keeping for himself the land beneath. Well, let's say the same thing over here. If Shimon is makdish the field, but he's keeping for himself the grafted carob or the pruned sycamore, so if he's keeping those for himself, so Memele is oichet keeping the land beneath them, and if he's keeping the land beneath them, well then they're not nurturing from the hektish field, they're nurturing from the land that he kept for himself. Ho 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 ho! Ha ha! Da da da! So Rav Huna says that if Shimon sells everything to Reuven, but he keeps for himself 2 trees, he's not just keeping the trees, but oichet the land beneath the trees. But Reb Shimon is saying, that's Rav Huna and Amor. Reb Shimon in our Mishnah though is saying that if somebody's makdish the field, so memele, even though technically speaking the grafted carob and the pruned sycamore should be excluded, but because they're nurturing from the ground and the ground is hektish, so they're hektish too. Which means that when these trees are excluded, only they are excluded, but the land is included. And therefore, Rav Huna, right, it's a kasha Rav Huna, meaning based on this we would say that if Shimon is selling, right, based on Rav Shimon, it sounds like we would say that if Shimon is selling his field to Reuven, but he keeps 2 trees for himself, he's only keeping the 2 trees for himself, but the whole field goes to Reuven. And that's why, in the case of hektish, the grafted carob and the pruned sycamore become hektish because the whole field is hektish. Even the land that these trees need, the land around them that they are nurturing from, it's all hektish. But if it enters your mind, like Rav Huna says, that when trees are excluded, he also excludes the land around them. So ki kayanki b'dinavshe kayanki. Well, in that case, why should the grafted carob and the pruned sycamore become hektish? The land beneath them is not hektish, which means that they're not nurturing from hektish, so they shouldn't be hektish. So rather, what it means is that the land beneath them is also hektish, which would mean by a sale, the land beneath the two trees would also be sold. So Reb Shimon Damar Krab Akiva. Oh, interesting. Ravuna Damar Krabona. Well, so the Gemara had said, right, we had just explained, right, that the Gemara had said that even Rav Huna's statement is even according to Rabbi Akiva. Rav Huna's statement is even according to Rabbi Akiva. Even Rabbi Akiva, who says mocher b'ayin yafeh hu mocher. However, if Shimon sells his field to his property to Reuven, but keeps for himself two trees, even Rabbi Akiva would say that the land underneath them he keeps for himself, so that he can replant them if they fall down. However, we are going back on that, and now we're saying no. Rabbi Akiva is the one who says mocher b'ayin yafeh hu mocher, which means that if Shimon sells his field to Reuven and keeps for himself two trees, Rabbi Akiva would say he's only keeping those two trees, because mocher b'ayin yafeh hu mocher, he sells everything to Reuven. And when Rav Huna says that the land beneath the trees are Shimon maintains for himself, that's according to the rabbis who say mocher b'ayin ra'hu mocher. And Reb Shimon says, like his Rabbi Akiva, that mocher b'ayin yafeh hu mocher, and therefore makdish b'ayin yafeh hu makdish. And therefore, if somebody is makdish his field, he's makdish the whole field. And if the grafted carob and the pruned sycamore are excluded, only they are excluded, but the land underneath is hektish, and therefore it ends up that they are nurturing from hektish, which means that they themselves also become hektish. So Ravuna Dam Karabanim, but Karabanim Pshita. But one second, so we're saying that Rav Huna, who says that when Shimon maintains the trees, he also maintains the land under them, he's saying that according to the Rabbanon? What? Okay, that's obvious. That's the opinion of the rabbis. But the rabbis say mocher b'ayin ra'hu mocher. So therefore, if Shimon keeps for himself these two trees, Mameli is also keeping for himself the area, right around the trees and beneath the trees that nurture the trees. So nafkamina di inofle hadar shasalu. Well, not necessarily. Meaning, it could be, you could have argued that by default, meaning if we didn't have Rav Huna, if all we had was the rabbis, so then when I may have thought that so long as the tree is alive, so then also the land around it belongs to him. But if the tree falls down, well then that's it. Just like, for example, by a pit or a ditch, right? If it kind of irreparable, if it kind of completely breaks. What does Rashi say? Dumya, I'm at the top of Rashbam and I'm Bezim with Aleph. Dumya de bor v'dus the inofel abor v'adus v'efshel l'sakno ein lo o derech. That if the pit or the ditch were to, or the cistern were to break and it's irreparable, it's unfixable, so done. Okay, Shimon's out. So I may have thought also if the tree falls down, the tree's done, so maybe he's out. So therefore, I need Rav Huna to say that no, that he keeps for himself the land to the extent that even if the tree dies, he'd be able to replant it. That's what we need Rav Huna for. Chevra, we're going to stop here. It's mamash at the end of Daf Ayin Aleph with Beis. Tomorrow we're going to start from the top of Ayin Beis with Aleph. This isn't an official stopping point, but it is a place where we can stop. Chevra, to get a good night's rest tonight. Tomorrow's going to be a difficult daf. Look, above Mitzvah, every daf was a difficult daf. So, okay, look. But it's like, today we needed koiches for today. Even though it was a small daf, it was above Mitzvah daf, it just wasn't big enough to turn our brain to mush. But, we had to work through it. We also have to work through it. It's a little bit bigger. So, and tomorrow we're going to finish the 7th parak of Masechta BavaBasra. Peace out.